wanted to welcome you to the What God Is Not podcast, where you could join Father Michael O'Loughlin and my godmother, Mother Natalia.
Hey friends, this is Mother Natalia. Today's episode is Father Michael's, and he's revisiting a concept that we've talked about before, which is covering the nakedness of our neighbors. So it's a reference to the story of Noah and Shem and Japheth, and them covering the nakedness of their father when he gets drunk. Father Michael talks about the invitation from the Lord for us to meet our brothers and sisters, our spouses, our community members in their weaknesses and help to make up for what is lacking there without bringing shame upon them. We give the nuance of when to not do that, or at least one of the nuances. And Father Michael gives us a brief history lesson about the Bay of Pigs and John F. Kennedy. If you are a hashtag banter hater, this episode is for you because there is hashtag no banter.
Glory to Jesus Christ.
Glory to him forever.
Hello, Mother.
Hello, Father. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's been a crazy day, and for that reason and just the way we scheduled these, you've probably noticed, listeners, that the next two, starting in this one, are probably the shortest episodes we've ever done, because we need to do priestly and nunly things this evening, and we need to get these done because we are behind. I've realized when I jump on there
true.
because of both of our crazy schedules. So no banter. Sorry, banter, hashtag banter lovers. But I'm going to jump right into my topic now that I've had to cut in half for what we planned on doing earlier because it's been a crazy day. So please do say a quick prayer for all those involved in my craziness today, which was an unexpected craziness. So we got started late, and I cannot go long. And then please pray for me for wisdom. That's the biggest thing. Please pray for me for wisdom. It's a situation that I will share with you, Mother, later on. That I don't know what to do. We priests have many situations like that. I do not know what to do about this. So I need wisdom from our Lord, so that God, He knows what to do. I don't, and so He needs to tell me or handle it Himself, as He can do sometimes better than involving me. So we'll see.
Well, if you want to talk on the phone on your drive after this, we can do that if you want.
Oh, there we go. Actually, that'd be kind of cool. All right, I'll get some spiritual direction.
Kind of cool. Do you know how many people think it would be super cool to talk to Mother Natalia on the phone?
That's true. That's very true.
I was joking.
No, you're right though. It's actually correct. Even though I know you were joking. All right. So I had a situation recently that made me kind of tie in a bunch of different scripture verses and stories I'd heard together. So there's basically three things I want to hit in the next 15 minutes that I think show a really beautiful aspect. And I'm going to make this mostly about marriage because I think that's where the rubber hits the road most intensely and most frequently. So basically... Do
you mean this for this particular topic or just in general?
What do you mean?
Like you said, marriage is where the rubber hits the road most frequently and most intensely.
Or this topic.
Oh, okay. I was like, yes. I don't know if I agree with that as just a general, but okay, got it.
Yeah, no, for this topic. But I do think marriage is the most, that is the place where the ordinary church works the most in the way that God intends. I think the domestic church, where marriage and children are, is the normal, and therefore, in a sense, I gotta use this properly, the normal, and therefore, in a sense, the greatest work of salvation is within the family.
Okay.
You may say it's monasticism, and I
don't know. I think it depends. I think it depends on what you mean by greatest. But specifically, when you were saying before that it's like the most intense. Anyways, it doesn't matter because that's not even what you were saying. But I was like, I don't know. Monastic life is super intense.
Oh, yes, of course. But I think it's intense in a unusual and super usual way. It's there's a decision that the monastic makes to experience that in a way that is beyond what God created the world to be and to do.
I think we could have a whole episode arguing about this, but yeah, I'm going to let you.
Amen.
I'm going to let you finish.
So basically, I had a situation where one member of a couple basically said, I know myself well enough to know that something is about to happen in my life that I'm not going to do things I'm proud of. And I'm going to be in a situation where I'm not myself, and I'm going to be tried, and there's going to be a lot of struggle. And I'm warning you and everybody within basically, they said, within my circle of influence, that just you're going to have to give me patience and understand that not everything I say, not everything I do, I desire, and I'm not really myself because of this situation I'm going to be put in for, like, let's say a week. It was a week that they said. And I thought that there is something that takes, speaking of wisdom, what I asked for earlier, that takes a lot of wisdom, because basically I want to tie this into Genesis 9. And Genesis 9 is one of the most impactful moments that I've had in the past few years to understand what it's like to love and to minister and to be part of a community, since I'm not married. And that is basically the part of Genesis 9 I'm talking about, is when Noah's two sons walk backwards and cover his nakedness. And there's obviously various interpretations of this. There's the actual, they literally just took a cover and walked backwards so they did not see him naked, and laid it over him so that nobody else could see him naked either. Whereas their other brother, Ham, had actually looked upon his father's nakedness and then gone and told his brothers. Now, again, we interpret that in different ways. Fathers have, scripture scholars have, but there's something about what the two brothers do in the covering of Noah's nakedness that shows that there is a weakness or a vulnerability on Noah's part, and that they assisted in that. They did not take advantage of it. They did not mock him. They did not do anything. They allowed, even though he was not able to do it himself because he was drunk and passed out, they helped him. And they did it in a way that he didn't ask for, in a way that, God rewarded them for, and he rewarded them for. But I think one of the interpretations that I like most about this is that when someone is weak and vulnerable, there's a couple of different responses we can have. One of them is that we take advantage of it for our own good and for our own benefit. And by good, I don't mean good. I mean, in a selfish way. We see an opportunity that can build us up by tearing them down, and so we take it. That's probably what Ham did. Shem and Japheth, rather, they cover their father's nakedness. They, in a sense, probably make up, in a way, if you will, for his weaknesses, his vulnerabilities. And by doing that, they're rewarded by God and by Noah. And so I think that there's a time, especially within marriage, where marriage can seem like a competition at times. Married couples have to call each other out. They have to encourage each other. They have to say, I'd like to do something within the family that is different than what you want. And I need to, have an encouraging but a convicting conversation. And I think a lot of times in married couples that I see in my years of speaking to them as a priest, that it does seem like if I've done something to hurt my wife, or if I have done something wrong that hurt the family, then if my wife does something wrong to me or to the family or in general, I am going to kind of call her out on it. I'm going to reveal it. I'm going to expose it for the sake of saying now we're even, or
everything you're describing, by the way, 100% I've experienced in monastic life.
Yeah, no, and I have in a sense in priesthood too. But I think that the leadership roles in the monastery are different than they are in a marriage. So when the couple has What in a monastery obviously happens among peers, that's slightly different as well, and even among the nuns themselves, that they're not in leadership. But when you have a married couple, there can be almost a competition or a desire to make sure that the couple, and this is usually, after a long time, and some of the initial romanticization and the honeymoon kind of wears off a bit. And the couple can kind of tend to say, I'm gonna point out every mistake my spouse has, because this does feel like we're not on the same team anymore. And I don't think they would say that. Of course, they would say they're on the same team, but a lot of couples feel that they're not, and so it's almost in order to feel better about myself, I need to identify all of your mistakes. Because you point out my mistakes, I'm going to point out your mistakes, and it becomes an issue pointing out mistakes. Whereas when somebody, like I heard, one member of the couple says, I need you to be patient with me, and I'm asking you this ahead of time. Because I've been in situations where, even in a leadership capacity like I may have, when someone in a sense is revealing their vulnerability and their weakness, I may say, I feel like if I don't call you out, or if I'm patient with this, and if I don't point it out, then I'm treating you like a child. I'm not actually giving you the dignity you deserve by saying, don't you want these things pointed out? Don't you want to grow? Don't you want to get better? And there's, of course, a very gentle, loving way to do that. And there's a very, malicious and selfish way to do that. So this is what I mean by there's always, in the greatest aspects of our life, there's always wisdom needed, because there's always nuance. In the hardest things, the most important things, there's always aspects of nuance, and therefore wisdom is needed in those situations. But I want to tie that in real quick to another situation where, and again, I don't know the story exactly, but basically during the Bay of Pigs, which was when the United States was very afraid that Cuba was going to use nuclear weapons that they got from Russia to bomb the U.S. And there was a standoff between the United States and Cuba / the USSR at this time. And as the story goes, one of the leaders, I don't know if they were from either in Cuba or from the USSR, I think they were from the USSR, basically wrote a letter to JFK, who was the president at the time, and said, again, without knowing the story too well, some listeners probably know it better, there's a lawnmower happening outside my window, so that may be what you're hearing about it. They basically, he wrote and said, in so many words, we're not going to back down. Basically, this is going to be a standoff. We're playing chicken here, and you should be very, very afraid. Within like a day, maybe even less, he wrote a second note to JFK saying, you know what? Let's work for peace, to overgeneralize. He went from saying, war is imminent, to let's work for peace. And so JFK, according to the story I heard, got the letters in that order. Okay, war is imminent, and then, okay, let's work for peace. When JFK got the letter that said, basically, let's go ahead and work for peace from his enemy in this case, JFK pretended like the first letter never came. He just said, sure, thanks for asking for peace. And we would call that tact. I think I've even mentioned this story before on the podcast. We'd call that tact. Basically, he was doing... Thank you. Okay. He was doing what Moses's oldest, what Shem and Japheth did by covering over the vulnerability and the nakedness. Like the man, whoever sent this letter, the original one from USSR, basically said, okay, I made a mistake. I've changed my mind. And JFK says, you're fine to change your mind. Like, I think that what you changed your mind to is actually more helpful and better for peace. And so I'm going to acknowledge that one and not acknowledge the other one. So obviously there's wisdom here, because you need to say, you should not have sent the first one. But hopefully you know that by sending the second one. So within marriage, especially, but within any sort of, human interaction, whether it's monasticism, single life, the life of a pastor, life of a celibate, whatever these things are, there is something, I know it's hard, but it is such a beautiful virtue, even though it is so hard, to say, I am going to, when I see you weak or when I see you vulnerable, I'm going to let you know that I'm on your team, and I'm going to actually sacrifice myself for the sake of letting your vulnerabilities not be taken advantage of by me, by yourself, by the devil, by your friends, by my family, by your family, by anything. And I'm going to take on the role of saying, what I could have used for my selfish benefit, I'm actually going to, out of love, assist you in letting nobody, not even the devil, use it for a selfish benefit. And I think this becomes really hard when relationships become in any way frustrating, competitive. We feel like this person, has I need to repay them for what they've harmed me. I need to harm them back. But I just think that's a beautiful virtue to pray for. And when this person asks this of their spouse, that they did that because they trusted their spouse would take that well. And they even talked to me about it. And I was honored by the fact that they would say, I may say some things or do some things during this period that anger you, that frustrate you, that even hurt you. But I'm saying this ahead of time so that you can prepare your heart to be a little more patient with me than usual. And it was just so beautifully asked and very beautifully accepted.
Yeah. And there's something about the humility of that just really disarms people and like opens people up to be able to love. We've had this in our community more times than I can count. Many times it's been people actually think of it ahead of time, like you're saying, when it's like some event is coming up that we're having to spend so much time planning for or something. And it's like, we might warn everyone, this week is going to be really crazy as I'm doing all of this work and I'm probably going to be snippy. And I just want you to know ahead of time, like, it's not you. And that's we've never, the point of that is not to make an excuse, but to give an explanation, to say like, I'm not saying it's okay that this is going to happen, but what I'm saying is I know it's not okay. And I know that now, and I'm going to know it when it happens. And probably I'm going to be beating myself up when it happens. And, I don't remember which of the epistles is like, when someone repents and comes back into the community, like accept them with love because they've already had all the punishment that they need. And to give more punishment is only going to, is that 1 Corinthians? I don't, anyways.
Corinthians. So 1 Corinthians was kick the guy out. 2 Corinthians was okay,
2
bring him
Corinthians
back.
is like bring him back.
Bring him back
but
quickly
like,
and with love. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And also this happens often in our community just in the midst of some kind of breakdown, where it's like maybe you've been really off and you've been like not a super fun community member to live with. And that's because, and you finally just like break down in tears and you're like, look, everybody, I just found out my mom has this diagnosis and my best friend is having this difficulty in marriage and this happened and I'm not detached and and just, I'm really sorry and bear with me. But when someone says something like that, it like, I can't even articulate how much your own, I know this from being on the other, I'm often that one having the breakdown and apologizing to everyone because I'm a big jerk, because I'm often just kind of a big jerk. But when I've been on the receiving end of that explanation, I know that anything in me that was bitter, that was judgmental, that was angry, it's like as soon as they're in tears and explaining their pain, it all disappears. And I'm just like, I want to be with you and help you in your pain. And I think that's just like a very human thing in us, that it calls forth our compassion.
And I think in both the worlds we're talking about marriage, when I'm explaining in monastics, they're explaining, you know the person loved them because like that's so true. Like I think it's important to say, I'm preparing you for this because I'm going to do things I regret. And I promise you, I do regret them. Like, don't throw it in my face. Don't like, I know, like because we have this tendency, oh, here you go. I hope you really regret this because you're doing exactly what you said you were going to do. It's like, no, that's why I said it. So know that I am, because some people marry narcissists. Some narcissists don't understand in the moment. They don't even have the capacity, many would say, to to apologize or to even know how much they're hurting someone or to care. And so in a situation of community, I hope that's the case. I hope all anger goes away, all bitterness. And I hope that there's a fraternity, if you will, in the healing, in the covering up. So, and I want to just tie it in right before we finish, unless you have something else to say.
I just want to say, I know you already said that it's nuanced and it takes wisdom and all of that, but I do want to, and this is very obvious, but I just want to make the disclaimer of like, we're not saying if something like abusive is happening, you should just cover that up and not let, like, you're not, and that's obvious. And I would hope that for all of our listeners, that's obvious. But I just want to put that out there, I guess, in case.
No, I don't think it is obvious. I think you're very right and good in doing that, because there is such things as enablers. There's such things as out of fear or either out of ignorance, allowing people to remain in their sin and to continue to harm themselves and their relationship with Christ and you and others and many other people. So we're not talking about that. And that's actually something where someone needs to stand up and put up the right boundaries or to, call someone out.
Yeah. And you can, I think that's important to say, because we can get misconceptions about this even by reading some of the fathers and stuff. Like I remember reading a really beautiful, like, Eastern writing, and 98% of it, I was like, this is spot on. This is amazing. And then they made one comment in the book about, I won't say which book it is, but they made one comment about, like, if you ever see your elder doing something sinful, assume that you saw it wrong. And I'm like,
Right.
Well, anyways.
That has led to a lot of spiritual abuse.
Right. That's my point.
If that is preached by the elder,
Right.
There's something to say for the elder saying, no, I'm the worst sinner here, and always think that I'm sinning. And then the other person saying, no, I'm the worst sinner here. I'm assuming that I'm wrong. There's a place for that, but there's also a place for out of
I think
love.
it said something like, if you see your elder kill someone, assume that your eyes have deceived you or something. And I'm like, well, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Anyways, what was your last point?
So I think tying this into, and this is easier when the person warns you, even though that's still hard. It's really hard when the person doesn't warn you, and you have to cover up their nakedness in a sense, or protect their vulnerabilities, or allow them to, because this is not like not allowing people to suffer the consequences of their actions. This is not that. Sometimes it is, but as long as the consequences aren't allowed by God, or even encouraged by God, if you will, to help them in their journey. But there is, so it's easier when someone warns you. It's easier when someone says, I'm going to do things I regret, than even when they're doing, I regret this, I'm having a hard time with it, just please be patient with me. But when it comes to like forgiveness, it's much easier to forgive someone who asks for forgiveness. But that's not the only kind of forgiveness we're asked to do. We're asked to forgive everybody. And so I think one of the ways that I process this, and this is just my last thought, but it applies, is when I read the passage, and this is from Matthew 21, when I read the passage that says, tax collectors and prostitutes will enter the kingdom of heaven before you. I always try to put people that I get frustrated with in that place. This person and this person will enter heaven before you. And God says to me, do you want that? Do you want this person that's hurt you so bad? Do you want this? And again, I've not been hurt horribly, so I'm one to talk, but do you want this person to enter heaven before you? And I think the only way to answer yes to that, which is what we should answer, is to say, I trust God enough that his justice and his mercy are better than mine. So I desire that they enter heaven before me, that they, in a sense, welcome me to heaven. But I trust God to say that that's only going to happen according to his justice and his mercy that I trust. Not my justice and my mercy, and not some, one that could be very opinionated or affected by too much by relativity and things that are emotions, things going on in my head. But when I say this person that hurt me so bad, I hope that they enter heaven before me and welcome me to heaven. What I'm saying is I hope that all the things that God has to do in them, and all the ways that they need to respond to that in order to be there, according to God's definition of salvation, all of that has obviously happened. So when I say, yes, I desire that, I'm kind of submitting my own definition of justice and mercy in their case to Christ's, which I should trust even more so. And that's really hard. But that's another way of saying somebody else's vulnerability, somebody else's weakness can be healed. And I'm going to do what I can to help that in the case of Noah, but I'm also going to pray for that when I'm not the one invited in to be part of that healing process, but rather God does it some other way.
I think one last little aspect of this that I would add in before we close is that you mentioned like how good it is to like show someone that you're supporting them in their weakness and so on and so forth. But I think that another aspect of this is when it's a non-sinful weakness, like just some human failing of some kind. I think that there's also one of the even more difficult things is to cover up someone's nakedness when they don't even know that you're doing it, which is like a great act of virtue. That's when it's not even known. Like, I'm just thinking of my poor family and my poor community. I have this terrible habit of correcting people while they're telling a story. I'm like, no, that's not how it happened. Like, this is actually what happened. And it's because I've realized, I think I've talked about this on the podcast before, but I've realized, I'm like, why do I do that? And it's genuinely not usually coming from a place of like, I want to be heard. I want to be right. I want whatever. It's like one of my strengths, I think, is justice. And so it's like, and I just want the truth to be told. And like, if the car was blue and not red, I want that to be like, it's just, I don't like this incorrect thing being out there in the world. It's so dumb. It's so dumb. But anyways, once I realized I was doing this, I'm like, what the heck? I mean, okay, sometimes if someone's got a detail of a story wrong that actually affects the point of the story or the punchline or whatever, that's different. But like, I've started, when I'm about to jump in and correct someone's story, I've started like just asking myself, does that actually need to be corrected? Is that actually
is it going to be helpful?
Yeah. Right, yeah. Or is it simply, anyways, but little things like that, or someone accidentally skips a litany in the liturgy or something like that, or skips one petition in the litany. Like, okay, it's not the consecration. It's not the end of the world. You don't have to point it out to them. If they're skipping the same litany every single time, then maybe you pull them aside and say like, hey, I've noticed you're always skipping this. But yeah, like why? So anyways, that's it.
And this is a nuanced situation as well, but I saw a video the other day where I think it was like a kindergarten teacher. So this is for kindergartners in a classroom, so it doesn't apply to all situations. But she basically said, do not point out something that is wrong with someone unless they can fix it in 30 seconds. So, basically if you have toilet paper stuck to your foot or if your zipper's down, then tell them because they can fix that in 30 seconds. If they have a pimple on their face or if they, if they have a bad haircut, you don't need to do that because they can't fix that. This is for kindergartners, but there was a wisdom there that I thought this is like, is what I'm about to say actually helpful? And that takes, of course, wisdom and discernment. So, all right. Shortened form of the thing. We are on all the platforms. We are on some social media, Facebook and Instagram. We have a Goodreads. We have a nonprofit called PHOTINA. Google it. We have a Patreon, PATREON, Google it. And that's it. We love you. And I'm going to ask you for my prayer intention to pray for the situation that happened this morning. It involved mental illness. And please pray for the people that were struggling with mental illness, the people who didn't know how to handle it well, and for me, that I may receive the wisdom from God to deal with this the way that He desires in love and gentleness and for His kingdom.
Please pray for a fellow listener, Noelle, who reached out after the Despair Not episode with a prayer intention. Just pray for her and her family. A lot of suffering, a lot of grief. So good to be with you, Father Michael. We'll record another very short episode momentarily. Love you. Please, can you give us a blessing?
Lord bless you and keep you, cause His face to shine upon you, have mercy on you. May our Lord give you a softened heart, a meek heart, to see the weaknesses in others as opportunities for love. May he give you a strong and a courageous heart to not in any cowardly way or any selfish way use the vulnerabilities of those who love you and you love against them, but rather may you do the strongest thing, the most proper thing, the best thing, the most true, good, and beautiful thing. And may God give you the wisdom to understand that in your interactions, that you may love them in a truly self-emptying and self-giving way, as Christ did. May our Lord give you all of this, and even the salvation of your soul. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.